there is another question which has come in, which is around strong proactive maintenance of foolproof sensors means clean ambience. Uh, okay, so I think the question is more around continuity of applications in an organization. So I think I will probably expand the scope a little more. I think the intent of the question is that uh, you do something, whether it's a predictive maintenance or you use some investments, but then how do you ensure that any initiative which is taken by an organization continues and there is a sustainability aspect to it? So I'll just, take a first stab at that. This is not your problem only. I think, at least from my experience, I can see that, say that there are many organizations who also face a similar problem, that you quickly do a pilot, but then after that, the interest kind of wanes or goes away, and then you are back to square one. So from my experience, I can say that what really helps organizations in sustaining it is to ensure that the start is done in a proper way. The start of an initiative is not to really use AI because it's a new toy, but to use AI because it is going to give a sustainable benefit to your business. So starting with the end in mind is the first important task. The second important task is that if you are sure and convinced that it is definitely going to add to the top line or the bottom line or address the risks of your organization, then need to set up a proper governance and process around it to ensure that at every stage you are able to evaluate and support the process going forward. And the third important aspect is that you can't do it all alone. You need an ecosystem of hardware, software, data scientists, other people around you to make it all happen. Otherwise, you will be just reinventing the wheel. So think of proactively creating that ecosystem around you. So those will be my three key things. One is begin with the end in mind. Second is have a governance and a process around it. And third is build an ecosystem. Then chances are very high that whatever you build for your organization will last. The change will stick. Any other perspective from any other panel member, please feel free to jump in. I'm just quickly, going through in the interest of time.
If I was to quickly
Now,
add,
yes.
I think you're right. This pilot phenomenon, and we in the healthcare world, a friend of mine and I, we actually call it pilotitis, right? We end up conducting a lot of pilots, but alas and unfortunately, you don't really move this from a discovery phase into a development phase and eventually into a dissemination phase. And that, I agree with you, is critical. And I think what's going to be important is saying for this to have longevity to it, like I spoke about the data strategy and I spoke about incentives and I spoke about technical ability. It's about making sure that this is a medium-term strategy that organizations deploy. And let me give you an example. And once again, in some of my conversations with folks around the world, in the world of COVID, there is a lot of work, especially in countries like the United States, where it's been ballooning and it's been crazy out there, to use artificial intelligence for bed allocation to decide how many beds should be set aside for COVID patients versus for non-COVID patients. Now, it may or may not come as a surprise to you, but the big challenge in the United States, depending on what the adoption of this AI has been fundamentally driven by the incentive, for example, to avoid medical lawsuits. And depending on geography and the incentive saying by medical lawsuits nahi chahiye, so maybe we'll actually make sure that we have a different bed allocation technique. It's not necessarily keeping in mind saying how many people are going to be afflicted by it, but about saying what's going to be. So the incentives that actually drive some of this behavior in the data strategy, in AI and ML, in the use of this, and in deploying assets and investments for technical ability to stitch all of this together is going to be, it's important that it dawns on organization. It already has, because we all have to go through this transformation of business model. So in some sense, it has been awakened up. But I think there's a lot of uncharted territory and unconquered frontiers as we speak.